Michael Frost is an Aussie who penned an article for the Washington Post entitled Colin Kaepernick versus Tim Tebow, a tale of two Christians on their knees in a September 24 column. You'll want to read the article first, and you can find a link in the description below. There are multiple foundational issues with this article. Why does Frost, an Australian, get to decide how the American church is divided, what the dividing issues are, and who represents each of the sides? And why does he pick two ex-NFL players as representatives when neither one resembles either prominent Christian thought leaders or the average churchgoer? Frost used deductive reasoning for his article. That is, he started with an idea about how two ex-quarterbacks fit the two halves of American Christianity, and then he made sure the church fits and splits into neat halves just like so. He falls into tribalistic and binary thinking. The church is two camps, Kaepernick Christians on one side and Tebow Christians on the other. Each side is different and follows the value system represented by their respective quarterback. Frost's big point here is bifurcation, a $10 word for arbitrarily splitting the church into two, regardless of hundreds or even thousands of denominations. Frost's clean-cut lines exist in the world of his article, but in the real world, Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick, and more than 100 million Christians in the U.S. are a lot more varied, messy, and complex in their beliefs than Frost's view even allows for. This raises my next point. Frost's article and thought process make assumptions, inferences, and subtle accusations about the beliefs, actions, and intentions of millions of American Christians. He does this by attributing certain qualities to one side and suggesting that the other side lacks these qualities, again, leaving no room for shades of gray. To illustrate this, let's look at one line in particular from Frost. One side is concerned with private sins like abortion. The other is concerned with public sins like racial discrimination. Because abortions are funded with public taxpayer dollars and racism is a private heart issue at its core, it's overly simplistic to merely call one public and the other private. Each is varying degrees of public and private, but this nuance is lacking. Frost works hard linguistically to avoid making his mistake too obvious, but it is noticeable here. One is concerned with abortion. The other is concerned with racial reconciliation. Do you see the subtle implication here? Tebow Christians are concerned about abortion, but not racial reconciliation. And this is vice versa for Kaepernick Christians. My question is, why can't each side be concerned with both? Abortion and racial reconciliation are two issues that everyone has feelings about. Some people will see one as more important than the other, and others will see both as equally important, and still others will see another issue as more important than both of these. Additionally, some will see these two issues as linked and others will not. This should illustrate how complex these two issues are on the most basic level, but somehow Frost has reduced them to a simple either-or formula, because if he's going to prove bifurcation, or two sides of a church, he can't allow for subtle nuances and millions of people somewhere in the middle. It's also of note that asserting without proof that millions of American Christians aren't concerned about either abortion or racial issues is a deeply prejudiced standpoint, and one that is statistically untenable. Furthermore, at the end of the article, Frost argues that each side needs something that the other side has, that they're two incomplete halves, if you will. This is further evidence of Frost's belief that one side doesn't care about things that the other side does care about. And this belief is necessary to come to the conclusion that the church is just two groups, Tebow Christians and Kaepernick Christians. Frost continues to push this idea of two Christian ex-NFL players representing two churches by forwarding the idea that Colin Kaepernick's brand of Christianity is much less acceptable than Tim Tebow's brand. He attempts to show that Kaepernick's faith and action as a philanthropist is exclusive, although Tim Tebow has done extensive philanthropy also, which Frost ignores, as Terry Mattingly notes on the Get Religion blog. This again is to show division to prove the two sides' argument, nuance notwithstanding. But no one hated Kaepernick for his philanthropic work, and anyone arguing this is a fool. Kaepernick is disliked for several reasons that are neither unreasonable nor unchristian. His performance on the field was dismal, especially for a quarterback that had gone to the Super Bowl before. He injected politics into an apolitical venue where Americans were taking a break from the 24-hour political news cycle, and he did so as a highly paid non-political figure wearing cops are pigs socks. He allied himself with the Black Lives Matter movement after studies and court rulings showed that many of their grievances were unfounded, while their actions showed a particular taste for violence directed at whites and cops and a penchant for burning down their own communities in protest. Frost spent a significant amount of time thinking up and writing down the differences between the footballers, but he missed what might be the greatest and most significant difference. why each man was kneeling. Tebow knelt in moments of personal triumph. When most players would say, "All eyes on me," Tebow humbled himself to say, "No, all eyes on God." Kaepernick knelt to point the finger at America and say that America writ large is racist, oppressing blacks and murdering them with police officers. Frost failed to understand that Tebow was pointing to God and Kaepernick was pointing the finger at others. Tebow was obeying his own morality. Kaepernick was demanding that others obey his morality. Kaepernick's protest and alliances were a declaration that white America and the cops were the problem, and the shortcomings of BLM, black culture, and black communities were ignored. Kaepernick's action said, "Dear America, you're the cause of the problem, and you need to make America align with my version of right and wrong. I'm protesting until you fix this mess." It wasn't a truthful statement, a provable statement, or a realistic statement, or even a Christian statement. It was arrogant, and it was undereducated. Kaepernick is many things. A martyr for his faith, he is not. Colin Kaepernick is demanding that all of America align to his views on what racial equity looks like. Ironically, this is the same kind of error that Frost makes. He wants the church to agree on his definition of Tebow Christianity and Kaepernick Christianity, and agree to realign to his ecumenical ideas. But Frost doesn't allow for middle ground, and he shoves millions of Christians into one camp or the other, not allowing them to have a more nuanced position. He fails to see that the American church is made up of individuals who have complex beliefs that should be understood better than just to lump them in a side headed by a former football player. As Christians, I think we need to do better than just making assumptions about millions of fellow believers we've never even met. We need to do better than to assume that half of our fellow believers aren't interested in race relations or the abortion issue, and instead we need to ask them about their beliefs. In short, we have to do better than prejudice and binary thinking.